My husband snuck in an 18-year-old to stay the night while I was away. He thought he won, but one move from me threw his entire world into chaos. I, a 24-year-old woman, am set to leave in 3 hours for a 5-day business trip. My husband, a 28-year-old man, is currently asleep while I'm finishing packing my bags. As I was packing, a text message popped up on his phone from an 18-year-old female friend of his, saying, "Yeah, I'd love to spend the night. That'll make things so much easier." This is someone we've had disagreements about before, primarily because he doesn't feel the need to share any details about her when they hang out, which is unlike how he behaves with his male friends. He has several female friends, and honestly, I don't mind them at all. They're good people, and there seem to be clear boundaries in place. But with this girl, it's different. Her texts pop up constantly throughout the day and sometimes as late as 1 or 2 in the morning, which feels inappropriate to me. I'll admit, curiosity got the better of me, and I couldn't resist reading their previous few messages. What I found made my stomach drop. He invited her to join him on a day trip to his favorite spot to smoke weed, noting that it's her first time trying it. Then, he asked her to stay the night at our house the evening before so they could get an early start the next day. The thing is, just last night, as we were getting ready for bed, I asked him what his plans were while I'd be gone. He usually makes an effort to do something fun for himself during my trips and tackles one big honey-do item around the house. When we talked about my upcoming trip, he was unusually specific, laying out exactly what he planned to do each day, but he didn't mention this girl at all. He made it sound like he was making the drive to his favorite spot alone. When I suggested he hang out with one of his friends, he brushed it off, saying, "I think I could use a quiet weekend in." Now I'm freaking out, and my mind is racing with questions and doubts. We've been having some trouble in our marriage lately, and I saw in their messages that he's been confiding in her about our issues. A lot. I completely understand needing a friend to talk to, and I've always encouraged him to lean on his support system. But he's told me before that he doesn't want his friends to think poorly of me. Yet from their messages, it's obvious this girl does. It hurts to know he's sharing our private struggles with her, especially when he's so secretive about their friendship. Reddit, I'm desperate for advice. What do I do? How do I handle this situation? I should probably mention that he has a history of hiding things about other women from me. I'm generally a laid-back person, and when he tells me someone is coming over, I'm the one who stops by the store to grab snacks for them. But he's lied to me before. About talking with a female coworker about sex late at night, and even about sharing a bed with someone he used to hook up with, just to name a couple of incidents. Each time, I've felt so foolish for trusting him, and now I'm feeling that same sinking stupidity all over again. I'm torn about how to bring this up. Part of me wants to confront him right now before I leave for my trip. Last night, we had what I thought was a really meaningful conversation where we agreed to use this time apart to reflect on what our marriage needs and what each of us needs individually to make things work. I thought we were on the same page, but apparently he needs her in a way he's not admitting to me. The other part of me wants to wait until I know she's actually at our house and then call him to ask what's going on. I've never been in a situation like this before, and I'm honestly not sure what to do. My heart is racing, and I feel like I'm losing my grip on what's real. I keep replaying our conversation from last night, wondering if I missed some sign that he was lying to me then too. I'm scared, hurt, and angry, and I don't know how to navigate this. This situation might be entertaining to some of you, but it's my real life, and the consequences I'm facing are going to affect me for a long time. There's a lot of backstory that's crucial to understanding the state of our marriage, so I've broken this update into sections for clarity. Feel free to skip over parts that don't interest you or skim what does. I've included a too long, didn't read at the end of each section and at the bottom of the post for those who want the short version. It was 1:30 in the morning when I posted, and I was running on fumes after only 3 hours of sleep. Needless to say, I wasn't in the best frame of mind. One commenter suggested I tell my husband I'm hurt and disappointed. "I'm leaving. You need to fix this." Another advised me to focus on the fact that it doesn't matter how I found out about his plans. What matters is that they happened. Those two pieces of advice really resonated with me, and I clung to them as I lay in bed, waiting for him to wake up. I spent that time typing out possible responses to whatever direction our conversation might take, trying to prepare myself for every scenario. I was terrified of saying the wrong thing or letting my emotions spiral out of control, but I knew I had to confront him. A quick side note, we've been together for 4 years, and other women have been a recurring issue in our relationship. My husband, along with many people close to both of us, insists he's not the type to cheat. They describe him as flirty but loyal, a guy who's all about long-term relationships and would never cross that line. But he has a pattern of withholding information from me because he thinks it'll make me angry, and he doesn't want to deal with me being upset. I'm a pretty relaxed person by nature, and honestly, I wouldn't have cared if he'd been upfront about inviting this girl over. In the past, when he's been honest about his plans, I've never made a fuss. I've even gone out of my way to make his friends feel welcome. But I haven't always handled his lying well, and that's made me cautious. So, while I was waiting for him to wake up, I did something I'm not proud of. Knowing he'd lied to me before, I wanted to have proof of what he was saying about this girl, especially since I'd be away, and she was supposed to be spending the night at our house. I set up his iMessage account to sync with my iPad. I know all his passwords, so I deleted the email alerts and added his phone number to ensure I'd see his messages. I'm not proud of invading his privacy like that, but we don't have cameras at home, and I felt like I needed to know whether he was being honest with me while I was gone. When he finally woke up, I decided to give him one last chance to come clean. As I was gathering my things for the trip, I casually asked him what he had planned while I was away. He launched into a very detailed rundown of his daily plans, conveniently leaving out any mention of this girl staying over or joining him on his trip to Colorado. I was absolutely livid. Just the night before, we'd gotten into a heated argument where he accused me of not trusting him, saying, "I've done nothing to deserve this, but you still treat me like I'm sneaking around." Those words stung because we've been going to therapy together, and I thought I'd made real progress in giving him the benefit of the doubt. I used to check his phone because of earlier issues we'd had, but I hadn't done that in months. His accusations made me feel crazy and ashamed at the time, and now here I was, standing in our bedroom, watching him lie to my face without a hint of guilt. I couldn't hold it in any longer. I looked at him and said, "I know you're lying to me. I know you're not going to Colorado alone, and I know you invited a freaking 18-year-old to spend the night in my bed." Then I just stood there, waiting for his response. The silence in the room was suffocating, heavy with the weight of everything unsaid between us. He took a deep breath and asked two questions. First, how did I know? I shot back, "It doesn't matter. I know." Then he asked, "Did I know during our conversation last night?" Another side note, because context matters here, we've been struggling with a lot of problems in our marriage lately. Both of us deal with mental health challenges that sometimes make things worse for each other. He has ADHD, depression, and PTSD. I'm starting to suspect I might have bipolar disorder, and I also have PTSD, anxiety, and several chronic health issues. He's not great at managing his anger, and while it's never been physical beyond throwing things or punching walls, it's definitely verbal and emotional abuse. I wasn't entirely sure it qualified as abuse before, but after a recent fight where I begged him to stop screaming at me so I could finish packing, he snapped, "You can multitask." That moment clarified things for me. When he's in that headspace, he can be a terrible person, and it's painful to admit that. But when he's calm and kind, he's the sweetest, most loving man I've ever met, the person I fell in love with. I still care for him deeply, even as I'm coming to terms with the fact that I don't deserve to be treated this way. The night before, we'd had a deeply emotional conversation that left me feeling hopeful for the first time in a while. I told him I wanted him to be happy because I could see he wasn't. I suggested he go back home, several thousand miles away, for a few months to figure himself out. I promised to be his biggest supporter, no matter what, and said that whether we stayed together or ended up divorcing, I'd always love him and consider him family. We've been through so much together and separately, and by the end of that talk, we were both sobbing. I even told him that if he needed another woman to be happy, I'd let him go and support him as a friend, as painful as that would be. That conversation felt like a turning point, a moment of raw honesty between us, and it made his deception the next morning feel like an even deeper betrayal. Because of that, I was probably harsher than I needed to be when I confronted him. I said, "No, I didn't know during our conversation last night, and now I feel like a complete idiot, like my husband has been sleeping with a teenager, and I just gave him my blessing." He tried to get defensive, insisting it's not like that. I got quiet, my voice low and steady, and said, "You're a very smart man, but if you can't see that this girl wants to get in your pants, you're a freaking idiot. She texts you about taking bubble baths, and you tell her all our problems when you won't even talk about me with most of your friends. You're confiding in an 18-year-old about our marriage." He said he'd cancel his plans with her, but I stopped him. "I'm not making that decision," I said. "You are. I honestly don't know how you can fix this. I don't even care if you go with her at this point, but I'm leaving, and I'm hurt and disappointed. You need to figure out where your priorities are because right now your priority isn't your wife. It's your 18-year-old crush." He kept repeating that he should have told me, but didn't want me to make him feel guilty for wanting to hang out with his friend. He insisted I should have known nothing would happen between them. I asked him point blank, "Do you love her?" His immediate response was, "No, of course not. That's not at all what I'm looking for." He went on to say that most of the time he doesn't even enjoy talking to her every day because she's so immature. I told him he was naive if he thought she didn't have feelings for him. I shared a story from my own life, When I was 18, I had a crush on a 28-year-old man. We went on a date, but when he found out my age, he told me he couldn't see me anymore. I said we could just be friends, but I still tried my hardest to win him over. My husband didn't say anything after that. He just sat there in silence for a long time, and I could see the weight of my words sinking in. That was the end of the conversation. He drove me to the airport, apologizing over and over, his voice thick with regret, but I felt nothing. Or maybe it was heartbreak, dulled by the constant turmoil in our relationship. I was so tired of feeling betrayed, so exhausted from the emotional roller coaster, that I couldn't even muster the energy to care anymore. I just wanted to get on my flight and leave it all behind, even if just for a few days. I confronted my husband about inviting an 18-year-old to spend the night and lying about it. He admitted to withholding information but insisted it wasn't romantic. I told him I was hurt and disappointed, and he needed to figure out his priorities. We left things as we'd planned during our emotional conversation the night before. We agreed to use the 5 days I was gone to do some serious soul-searching, to figure out what we each needed to be happy and what our marriage needed to survive. The plan was to talk it all over when I got home and make a decision about our future together. But when my plane landed at my destination, I got a text from my husband that shattered any sense of hope I'd been holding on to. He said he'd be moved out of our house by the time I returned, that he was going back home to the East Coast. He apologized for leaving me to handle our upcoming move on my own, saying he believed I'd be better off without him. He told me he was taking the car to drive back but would leave me all the money in our bank accounts, except what he needed for gas. He said he was sorry for keeping information about his friend from me, but our conversation the night before had been such a high point in our relationship for him. Waking up to be accused of cheating, he said, was a low point he couldn't come back from. He insisted his intentions with the girl were nothing more than wanting company on the drive, but he said it didn't matter anymore, and he'd leave me alone. I've never felt such a mix of anger, hurt, and desperation in my life. I was in the middle of coordinating travel for over a dozen people who were on the flight with me, and it felt like all the air had been sucked out of my lungs. I wanted to sob, to scream, to collapse under the weight of it all, but I couldn't. I was surrounded by people I was responsible for leading. I tried my hardest to pull myself together, but a few tears slipped out, and I had to focus on my breathing just to keep going. If I'm being honest, I'm not proud of how I responded. I begged him to stay. I'd left feeling like if he needed to leave and we didn't stay together, I could handle it. But the thought of coming home to an empty house, not getting to say goodbye, and having our 4-year marriage end over a text message was too much. I sounded like a child, pleading with him, saying I needed him, that he was making a stupid mistake, that I deserved more than having our marriage end this way. I threw out every cliché in the book, and it was humiliating, but I was desperate. He was resolute, though, and I had to focus on getting over a dozen people to our final destination, so I couldn't keep texting him. About an hour later, he sent another message saying he'd at least stay until I got back because of our dogs. Nobody could watch them, so he'd wait until I was home before leaving. We planned to have a phone call that night to talk through the specifics, but it never happened. I was too busy with work, and by the end of the day, I was physically and emotionally exhausted. I know from the text syncing to my iPad, and from him telling me directly that he canceled his plans with the girl. I also know he invited her over at one point during the week, which was partly my fault. I was getting his texts, and I didn't want him to be alone. If he slept with her, I thought, at least there'd be no ambiguity about where we stood. I found out he called his best friend, a truly phenomenal person with a strong marriage, and they talked for an hour and a half. That conversation seemed to help him a lot. He sounded calmer and more level-headed afterward. He told me he'd take the rest of the week to think things through, as we'd originally planned. We didn't talk much during the week. He texted me every day checking in, but I only responded sometimes. The days flew by and I realized I was dreading going home. I'm not sure if it was because of all the drama and chaos waiting for me, or because, deep down, I no longer wanted to be married to him. I don't know a lot of things anymore, and I've been trying to take each day one at a time, just to keep myself from falling apart. When it was time for him to pick me up from the airport, I had a small panic attack. I've had worse, but I sat outside at passenger pickup, struggling to breathe, feeling like there was no oxygen, and wiping tears from my eyes. Maybe it was the anticipation of not knowing what would happen between us or where we'd stand. I felt so lost, so untethered. When he finally pulled up and hugged me, he got emotional, saying how glad he was that I was home. But I felt so distant, so far away from him. Normally when we hug, it's intimate, like our souls are connecting. This time it felt like hugging a stranger, and that emptiness scared me. I'm home now, but things haven't gotten any clearer. My flight was delayed, so when we got back, we both just crashed into bed, too exhausted to talk. I was still asleep when he left for work this morning, so we haven't had a chance to discuss anything yet. I'm expecting we'll talk tonight, and I'll post another update then. I know a lot of you are probably looking for more resolution, some clear answer about what's going to happen, but I don't have it. I don't even know what I want right now. Part of me is ready to walk away, to be done with this marriage, to move on with my life and focus on healing myself. I'd take a good chunk of time to work on me, to rebuild my confidence, before even thinking about finding someone new, someone who's transparent, who accepts every part of me, even the messy, inconvenient parts. But another part of me wants to give him one more chance, one more opportunity to get his anger under control, to communicate openly, and to make our marriage work. To those of you reading this, it might seem like an obvious choice, a black and white decision, but to me, living through it, it's anything but clear. I've spent nearly every day with this man for 4 years. We've lived together for 2.5 years, built a life with 2 dogs, a house, shared dreams. Throwing all of that away, even if it's the right thing, feels like tearing out a piece of my heart. It's not a decision I can make lightly or impulsively. Since I left for my trip, he's been better about sticking to a routine, and he hasn't texted the girl at all as far as I know. He did mention that she approached him at work, and they talked briefly. I appreciated him being honest about it, but not knowing what they discussed makes me nervous, and I hate that I'm second-guessing him again. If we do stay together, there's so much work ahead of us. I told him he can kiss me on the cheek for now, but I can't be vulnerable with him or trust him fully, not after his anger and the things he said during our last big fight. Rebuilding that trust would take a lot of time and patience, and I'm not sure if he's willing to put in the effort. I'm not even sure if I am. If you want me to read and consider your comment, please don't completely vilify him. I know he's in the wrong here, there's no question about that. But he's been through a lot in his life, and I understand why he behaves the way he does, even if I can't excuse it. He's not a monster, even if he's acting like one right now. I'm trying to hold on to the good parts of him, the parts I fell in love with, while also facing the reality of who he's become. I forgot to mention something important. While I was gone, I saw messages between them on my iPad. In one she wrote, "Yesterday, when you asked me about your hair, I got nervous because I'd rather avoid the confrontation of this conversation. But I've thought about certain things that completely cross the line of being friends, and I didn't want to put myself in a situation I might not get out of, if that makes sense. I just didn't want to get into a tempting situation, so I needed to put up a wall. I'm going to go do some climbing." He responded, "That makes complete sense. I really understand. I knew I shouldn't have asked. That had always been a very comforting action for me, and I was giving in to my sadness, but I admire you for doing what was best for you. I really hope you have a fun time today." For context, he loves having his head scratched when he's stressed or upset, and he asked her to do it, which led to this exchange. He didn't know I'd seen the messages, so when I got back and asked what he'd been up to, I was relieved that he told me about it on his own. I said, "I really appreciate how you've been so open about things with her, even when it's uncomfortable. It makes me feel like maybe I can start to trust you again." His transparency, even if it was just this once, felt like a small step forward, but I'm still so guarded. My husband planned to move out but agreed to stay until I got back because of our dogs. He canceled his plans with the girl, and we're taking the week to think things over. I'm home now, but we haven't talked yet, and I'm still unsure what I want for our future. I've heard all of you loud and clear, and I can't thank you enough for your responses. I spent 6 hours in bed today, reading through your comments and crying my eyes out. Every single one of you is right. He doesn't want a strong, independent woman, and that's exactly what I need to be, for myself, not for him or anyone else. I just got off the phone with my mom, who's an incredibly religious person. I was sure she'd be against the idea of divorce, but to my surprise, she said almost exactly what many of you have been telling me. She listened to everything, and we worked together to make an exit plan, covering both the worst case and best case scenarios. I'm planning to talk to him tonight when he gets home from work, and I'm bracing myself for whatever comes next. In the meantime, I'm going to grab coffee with a close friend to try to calm my nerves. I've been putting myself second for so long, always prioritizing his needs, our marriage, our life together, that I deserve a moment of self-care, a chance to breathe and feel like me again. And before anyone worries, I never unpacked my bags last night. If I need to leave tonight, I'm ready. I have 9 people, friends and family, who volunteered to be on call to help me move, offer emotional support, or do whatever I need to get through this. All my valuables are already packed, and I'm prepared to walk away if I have to. I want to start by saying thank you to everyone who has commented on my last 2 posts. I haven't been able to respond to every single one of you, and I'm still working my way through all the comments. But the advice, personal stories, and overwhelming love you've shared have been exactly what I needed to keep going. Even the people who called me out, who criticized me for not being stronger or for hesitating, thank you. It hurt to hear, but it forced me to face the truth. We can't move forward from this. My husband has betrayed my trust so many times, in so many ways, that I'd need him to verify practically everything he says or does for the foreseeable future. That's no way for either of us to live, not for me, and not for him. The reality is that we're both deeply broken people right now, carrying our own wounds and struggles. We have no business being in a relationship with each other, or with anyone else, until we've done some serious healing. I don't believe he's a terrible person at his core. I've seen the good in him, the kindness and love he's capable of. But he's been a terrible partner to me, and as so many of you pointed out, he can be a good person and still be completely wrong for me. Last night, I lost my nerve. I was so terrified of losing him forever, of losing the life we've built, the memories, the man I fell in love with, that I backed down. I told him we should just take a break, that he should fly home to the East Coast and we should both work on ourselves for a while. There were a lot of tears from both of us, but when the conversation ended, I didn't feel relieved or hopeful. I felt stuck, trapped in the same cycle of doubt and pain. This morning, when I woke up, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I've done this before. In a previous abusive relationship, I tried to soften the breakup, to leave the door open because I was too scared to let go completely. I set up safeguards back then to make sure I could leave, and I realized I was doing the same thing now. My husband doesn't deserve to be strung along, to be given false hope that we can fix this, and I don't deserve to be stuck in a marriage where I can't trust my partner, where I'm constantly questioning my own worth. I went back and read more of your messages, and I can't thank you all enough for your words of comfort, your encouragement, your strength. To you, this situation is clear-cut, black and white, but for me, my thoughts are so tangled up in emotions, in our history, in the love I still feel for him, that it's hard to see the path forward. I have to let go of all of that, as painful as it is. So this morning, I did the hardest thing I've ever done. I sat him down and told him that while we could try taking a break and working on ourselves, it would never be enough. I can never truly trust him again, not after all the lies, the omissions, the betrayals. And he's made it clear he wants me to change parts of myself that I love, parts that make me who I am, and I'm not willing to do that. We've been fighting so hard for so long to make this marriage work, but we're too far gone. There were tears, mine, his, ours, but he took it better than I expected. He agreed to a no-contest divorce, and we've decided to spend the next few days packing up our house before our lease ends at the end of the month. Some of you might come at me with pitchforks for not punishing him, for not walking out last night, or for not leaving him to deal with the house on his own. And that's okay. I understand why you might feel that way. But I've made my choice. I'll be staying at my friend's house until my new apartment is ready, and I'm focusing on rebuilding myself, piece by piece. I won't help him pack unless I have someone with me because a lot of the stuff in the house is mine, and I don't want to leave it behind. You're all right. My self-confidence has taken a massive hit over the course of this marriage. I used to be so sure of myself, so certain of my worth, but these years of lies and emotional turmoil have worn me down. I have a lot of healing to do before I'm ready to even think about love again, and I've already scheduled 2 appointments with my therapist this week to start that process. In my eyes, my husband isn't a monster. He's a little boy who needs to grow up, to face his own demons and learn how to be a better person. We both made plenty of mistakes in this relationship. I'm not pretending I'm perfect. But instead of wallowing in self-pity, I'm choosing to take those mistakes as lessons and move forward. I'm the kind of person who's good at bouncing back, at finding my strength again. It's the getting out that's always been the hardest part for me, and you've all helped me through that in ways I can't even begin to express. I wish him nothing but the best, and I'm determined not to harbor hate in my heart. I know how easy it is for women who've been manipulated or abused to go back to their partners, to fall back into the same patterns. I've seen it happen, and I've lived it. That's why I've spent the last 48 hours talking to my family and close friends, opening up about everything that's been going on. I used to keep our problems a secret because I was so embarrassed. Everyone always said we were the perfect couple, and I felt ashamed of how broken our marriage really was. But now, I've told them everything, and I've made it clear that they are not to let me go back to him, no matter what. I don't think I'll get to that point, but I want to be absolutely sure I have that safety net in place. I shared my story for myself, because I desperately needed the loving wake-up call that this community is so good at providing. But I also shared it for anyone else out there who might read this and see parallels in their own life. If you're in a relationship that's making you question your worth, if you're feeling like you need to get out but don't think you're strong enough, or that things are bad enough to justify leaving, I want you to know you're not alone. You can make it to the other side, and you deserve to put yourself first. Feel free to message me if you need someone to talk to. We're in this together, and I'm rooting for you. We've agreed to a no-contest divorce, and I'll be staying with a friend while focusing on healing and rebuilding my life. Thank you all for your incredible support.